Hey, everybody. Welcome to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. I am your host, Dr. Michael Lennox. We're coming at you with some astrology for the week of February 7th through the 13th. The month is moving along, and I have to say this again, Zoe. I am so grateful January is over.
Yeah, that new moon really did you
Yeah, it
well,
really
huh?
did. It really did. Well, one of the things I'm going to talk about today is the fact that everyone's in Capricorn.
Ah,
Mercury just turned around
yeah.
and went direct middle of last week, but in Capricorn. Venus, of course, is wrapping up her retrograde process by going direct and in what we call her direct shadow, wrapping things up that were deep in our emotional bodies and, mostly end of December and January, also in Capricorn. Mars has entered Capricorn. So there's going to be a lot of interesting things this week with Mars's movement through this sign. But I want to also just put a little shout out to anyone who is learning how to use what I'm talking about week to week on the podcast and dial it into your natal chart. Some of our listeners, of course, know astrology well enough that if I say all the juice is in Capricorn, you know what to do with that.
hmm
You don't have to be an expert in astrology, though, to kind of figure out what to do or how to consider a moment where our minds are being rewired, but in one mansion, our feelings are being rewired, Venus retrograde, but in the same mansion. And then Mars, the third personal planet, entering the same mansion means now everything that we've been deconstructing through these retrogrades for the last bunch of weeks is all coming together with a kind of now here, put it in your body, put it in your embodiment. Mars says now we get to make choices and decisions based on what we've been marinating on, and the juice is in the Capricorn mansion of your chart. So one of the reasons why I say what I've been saying about being grateful to be on the other side of this is that Capricorn mansion is my first house, the house of the self. I mean, I'm a Sagittarius rising, but then inside my first house is the Capricorn mansion from the beginning of it till 29th degree of it. So first house of self, I have been personally experiencing all sorts of challenges around emotions and thoughts, and I'm grateful for it to be in the past and for Mars to be coming through this sign.
So what you're saying is that folks should look at where Capricorn is in their personal chart and then make their synopsis from there.
Yeah, exactly right. That's a perfect way of putting it. That you can go to astro.com right now, any of the various websites that will offer a free chart if you've never done this. I'm guessing if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have done this. You're probably sitting on a copy of
You've
your...
gone to Astro Cafe.
Right. But it's actually not as complicated to do if you keep sort of focused on what the task is at hand, meaning don't get lost in the whole glyphs and the angles and the complex visual of the chart. Just look for the Capricorn symbol, which you usually can find on a little graph that's associated with some of these charts, and then look at the chart to identify the house. And if you don't know exactly how to do that, the 9 o'clock position, if it were a watch face or a clock, is the first house, and it moves counterclockwise. So if you count which house is ruled by the Capricorn archetype, then you can look up the meaning of that house. That's easy enough to do on Google. What does the fifth house in astrology mean? And then you see that, I have Capricorn on my fifth house. And the fifth house is about creative expression and personal relationship to joy and the delights of life. Maybe you've got Capricorn on your 10th house of work and career. Now you've got a deeper sense of context about how to apply in your life. The synopsis of the process then would be, it's impacting my blank part of my life because of the house that's being activated. By the way, you can do this with every new moon and full moon going forward. So if this is the first time you're hearing about this idea Though it might be a little complex to figure this out at first, it's worth your while to be able to say, oh, look, there's a new moon in Libra. That's my 11th house of circles of friends and the community. And then you know where to set your intentions more, in a more focused way.
Hmm.
So yes, Capricorn is the mansion where everything is very juicy. In the second segment in our talk about astrology today, I'm going to be talking about the impact of Mars careening through Capricorn right now, because it's got some big meaning that plays out this week in particular, or starts to play out this week, which I'm kind of excited about. But first, we're going to talk about what Mercury is doing in his wrap up. So Mercury has, in fact, turned around. He went direct on the 3rd of February. And so by the time you're probably hearing this podcast, he's already been direct for a couple of days. But the fact is, it's not until today that he actually started moving closer to his regular pace, right? He went retrograde at 24 degrees of Capricorn, and it took him 3 or 4 days to even just move 1/2 a degree. And as we start this week, he's now at 25 degrees of Capricorn. That means he's inching towards his regular pace, but moving slow. When Mercury is moving slow, our minds are still in some kind of process experience. Even though now that he's not backward moving, we're not like confused or bumping into the furniture or having communication breakdowns. In fact, this week in particular is very powerful for knitting together deep and penetrating conversations and negotiations that might have been going on for the last couple of weeks, but this week actually have some powerful movement forward because of the 2 Mercury transits that are hitting this week. Let's break this down by talking about the 2 different transits and what they mean and what they were likely to have reflected. One of them was the thing that both Venus and Mercury did in their retrograde cycle, which was hang out with Pluto for a while. And a conjunction, meaning 2 planets at the same place, is the most powerful way 2 planets can interact. And when it's Mercury and Pluto, something interesting is happening because Mercury is how we think and communicate. And Pluto represents, or at least one of the things that Pluto brings, is all of the things that are deep and hidden and frightening and scary to us. Power and authority issues that trouble us are a Pluto domain. Just the idea of having revelatory conversations and thoughts about material that is typically below the surface of your awareness or in such sort of dicey, squirrely power struggle consciousness, they're conversations that are difficult to have. But when Mercury comes together with Pluto, we are ready to dive a little bit deeper, to reveal a little bit more, even if that revelation is to ourselves. I'm not just talking about sharing with someone else the hidden secret that you're now ready to describe out loud. It can also be your own psyche allowing you to dive into some place where you recognize a thought pattern maybe that you've had your whole life is really rooted in fear or limitation or shadowy kind of stuff that keeps us from being more empowered. So Pluto and Mercury joined up while Mercury was moving through his first section, then once in the retrograde, and again this coming week. So in the week ahead, we have a revisit or a wrapping up possible of some of these deep revelatory consciousness, conversations and awarenesses. But around the same time, Mercury was also trining the north node of the moon. That's a transit about moving forward, about having conversations, negotiations, or thought processes about your future, about where you wish to go. The North Node is that collective point that says the future is this way. A trine, a triangle, is the most harmonious geometry, and it's a really lovely moment when the planet of communication hits the North Node because we have thoughts and ideas and interactions about where we want to go next. Then, of course, in a retrograde, the way these ideas might have played out over the last couple of weeks might have been with delays or breakdowns or having to revisit conversations or thought processes. But they wrap up this week. What's kind of cool about this is that they both hit on the same day. Friday, the 11th, is the sort of revisit to deep, revealing ideas, thoughts, and conversations that help you understand where you're going next and how you're gonna get there. If you want to have some context for when these energies rose up first, you go back to the very end of the year. At the turn of the year, these two transits hit. They didn't hit on the same day as they do when they wrap up later this week, but the conjunction from Mercury to Pluto was December 30th. 3 days later, on the 2nd of January, Mercury trined the North Node. One simple way this might have played out is just as the year was coming to a close, you might have had some deep, dark thoughts about how difficult things have been and how you want to, honor that. That was right before the new year, Mercury and Pluto. And then as the new year was getting started, we were on the second day of 2022. Mercury trining the North Node might have taken those deep considerations and given you some sense of, now I know how to move forward. Except that then Mercury turned around and Venus was already retrograde. So January turned out to be a dive to the interior rather than a sense of where you're going to move next. So in a kind of a bait and switch experience, you might have entered 2021 thinking, movement. And then almost right away, it was like, oh yeah, not quite. We got to stop. We got to dive to the inner territories, into what I like to call the below, and process some stuff. Now that both Venus and Mercury are moving direct again, and we come to this third and final wrap up of the deep, revealing possibilities with Mercury and Pluto, and a simultaneous sense of, now we can move forward. I know what to do next. I have an idea of where I wish to focus my next steps. And that wraps up on Friday and will be a big part of how we meet the rest of the year. The second date setup to investigate. Now we're talking about the moment when Mercury was backwards. Now we're in the moment where the conversations or the ideas might be rising up again. Similar theme of going into the below, getting connected with power and authority struggles and unconscious sort of blockages, while in consideration of where we want to move next. The backward portion of this was the dates of sort of February 26th through the 28th, give or take it, maybe an extra day before or after. Now, of course, in January, these energies hit a second time. Only Mercury was retrograde when he moved through these two transits. The dates in question are January 26th and 28th. Those were the sort of spread of days while Mercury was backward, where we were again going into deeper, hidden, unconscious territory, either in our thinking or in our conversations and negotiations, with an attempt to figure out how to move forward, trine to the North Node. Only in that last week of January, this was the retrograde portion of this. So it might have been a much more complicated couple of days in terms of what you were thinking or processing. But those are juicy moments that relate to both the turn of the year, when he triggered these energies the first time, then this late January moment, and the wrap up that comes this Friday, and again a couple of days on either side of Friday. Now, if you look back and you don't see a thread, don't worry, you're not missing anything. It just might not be your particular retrograde to have an ongoing narrative that you need to pay attention to. And I only want you to glance back and go, oh my God, that's so amazing. If you don't see that, let it go. But understand, as we finish this week out and move into the weekend, we are all going to be having deep and revealing and powerful thoughts and conversations, particularly about where we want to go next. Have at it. I'm actually really excited about Mars moving through Capricorn right now. This is one of those boons of astrology where it's fun to anthropomorphize the planets and the movement of planets because it's one of the best ways to help teach about how these archetypal energies work as we relate to them as archetypal energies. And so in that, I might say, isn't it amazing that Mars decided to come into Capricorn after Venus and Mercury finished up doing some digging there? Now, Mars didn't plan this. It's just the solar system. But there really is something profoundly elegant about all three of the personal planets hanging out in the same sign for a prolonged period of time and connecting to the powerful death rebirth capacity that Pluto brings. It's really an outrageous opportunity. And the elegance of having the mind planet Mercury and the heart planet Venus being the two that go into the below, as we did in January primarily, and then having Mars come by at his regular speed. The story is our heart said we got to stop, we got to turn within, and we got to do some processes to open up to more love. The mind said, I'll join you so that I can also help us do a better job of communicating what my heartfelt desires are or where love wants to be. So the two personal planets that govern our thoughts and feelings doing a process really did transform how all of us on the planet give and receive love and communicate. And we're not done knitting together and wrapping up what we've learned. That's what happens when these retrograding planets are now moving direct again, but over the same territory they've recently traversed. That's the integrating passage, and we're in that now. So mind and heart is figuring out how to make some of the awarenesses we gleaned permanent and part of our psyche. But this is where conscious embodiment comes in, kids. This is why I have the moniker in my brand that I do. None of these things matter until we can embody them. I worked a lot on my anxious attachment and my Leo demand for incredible amounts of attention. And when someone that I want to pay me attention takes it away, I'm, 9 months old again. Right? I can have a deeper awareness of those wounds as they shaped me, which I was able to get in touch with Venus and Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. But until I can put the awarenesses I got into my decision-making capacity, my behaviors, the actions I choose, then what's it worth? It's not worth as much to have awareness until you're integrating that awareness into your embodiment so that it changes how you operate. And that's where Mars coming into Capricorn plays into this picture. So there's a couple of things that Mars is doing this week that I want you guys to be aware of. The first is happening tomorrow, the 8th of February, Tuesday. If you hear this podcast later, you can glance back and look at what happened and make a sort of an assessment of this. But the transit that's interesting to me is that Mars is going to trine Uranus. That's the planet of action. in a harmonious relationship for the day, give or take a few days, one on either side of Tuesday, with the energy of waking up to a higher level of awareness. It's a passing transit. Mars is not retrograde. He's just zipping through here. So outside of the Venus retrograde we're just coming out of, I might not even mention this. Yes, it's a day of excitable energy, lots of potential movement. You might sort of zip around in a powerful new way with the planet of action connecting with the lightning flash of Uranus. But what's more interesting about that trine is that it allows the body to integrate something that Venus gave us when she stationed, because Venus hung out at this degree point for 10 days. She held the trine with Uranus for 10 days, sort of 7 days at the end of her retrograde, then the turnaround when she did on January 29th, and then 4 or 5 days after. She hung out, opening up what was possible in our hearts to the wake up energy of Uranus. Now that's over. That's in the past. We got something out of it that we might not know what it is because it's emotional in nature. But as Mars zips through this trine in the early days of this week, something's going to happen to our embodiment that will download what our emotional body has just opened up to us being able to learn about or step into more fully as a result of the embodiment planet sweeping by this incredibly sensitive degree point of 10, 11, 12 degrees of Capricorn where Venus stopped moving. There may be occurrences or events that rise up for some of you in the early days of this week that are specifically relating to intimacy, love relationships, feeling experiences that you've been marinating in. Might get a kind of an added sense of purpose and an idea that you can now incorporate what you've learned into your day-to-day embodiment experience. Some of us may, in fact, find that in the beginning days of this week that we have figured out how to take action on something new based on emotional awarenesses that we've just sort of come through. So look for that during the first couple of days of this week. Something that happens over the weekend triggers a process that's going to take another bunch of days to play out. And this is Mars catching up with Venus. Remember, everything is juicy in the Capricorn mansion. Venus has been there for a while because she parked here to go retrograde. And Mars is speeding through at his regular speed. Every 2 years or so, Mars and Venus come together by conjunction. And when they do, it's a very important moment for all of us on the planet of integrating masculine and feminine principle as it lives in us. Even if you just want to think of this as your doing nature, Mars, and your being nature, Venus. Action, creativity, movement, stillness, all of these masculine, feminine binaries that we experience as human beings get to integrate when these two planets come together. And this happens every 2 years. It's a powerful experience when it happens, but it's regularly occurring. This one feels unprecedented to me because of the double retrograde, the proximity of Pluto, and the juiciness of the Capricorn mansion makes Mars's conjunction with Venus, I think, more, I think it has the capacity to change how we experience our doing and being and our masculine and feminine perspective. And I will absolutely be talking about this again at the top of next week's podcast because this just begins on Saturday. Mars and Venus connect up somewhere around 14 degrees of Capricorn, but then they'll hang out together and progress forward, staying at the same degree until somewhere around the 21st or 22nd of February, right? So a process that starts this week, finishes up next week, And I will speak about it at the top of next week's podcast as well. But begin this weekend to just look for different ways that you are feeling a difference between moments when you feel called to action and moments when you feel called to stillness and receptivity, and how those two impulses are living inside of you. Because by the time we get into like March and these full retrograde cycles are complete, we are all going to be transformed. And one of the ways that will show up is all of us will have a better, more integrated experience of how we make choices to take action and how we make choices to be still, and the value of both, and how to negotiate with ourselves about which is needed in what moment, so that we can have a richer experience as we move through life, having equal access to both our doing nature and our being nature. Have at it.
All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have an email-in dream from Pauline. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And she says, "Hi, Dr. Lennox. This is the second time I'm having this type of dream, and I'm curious what you have to say. The first time I was in a mall. I go into a store, but I leave my Louis Vuitton purse outside the door on the floor. When I come out of the store, I find that the wallet inside that bag is stolen. I instantly feel stupid for leaving my bag there, but I feel a great sadness for losing my wallet. I don't feel any gratitude for still having the bag. I only feel terrible about the wallet. On a side note, I own these things in real life. After having financially tough times over the years, my husband and I came into an unexpectedly high amount of money, and I treated myself to these specific goodies. I don't carry the bag, but the wallet is an everyday item for me." The second dream I had this morning. I'm in Istanbul, where I lived for 10 years before moving to the US. I'm walking on the Bosphorus with a friend or my daughter, and a taxi cab stops, offering us a ride. Although he's going the opposite direction, he picks up another couple as well. And I think to myself, is he going to drop off these people and then turn around to drop us off? In the rearview mirror, I see him as a typical Middle Eastern man with a beard. He takes us to the hub where taxi cabs are dispatched, and he says, "Let me take your coat and bag." This is the same exact bag. "I'll arrange something and come back." But when he doesn't come back, my bag and coat are gone, and it's clear they are completely lost. This is when I get really upset about my wallet, even though the bag is of higher value. I'm yelling at him as my friends try to scrape together the value of my wallet. They hand me these papers that are some random receipts and such, and I'm able to get 100 euros and 200 USD. But I'm still not satisfied and try to choke the taxi driver and demand my wallet back. At this point, his looks are completely different, and he's a red-headed, blue-eyed man. I should also add, the first time I had this dream, it came to me that the initials of Louis Vuitton are the consonants in the word love. My higher self is pretty wise. Thanks for the interpretation. I have your book. Best, Pauline. I found this interesting because it has like monetary and material goods, which I don't think we've talked a lot about before.
No, I don't think that we have. And it's a wonderful dream about Helene's relationship to abundance. And I
Mm,
think there's something interesting about the distinction between the wallet. A wallet declares that abundance is specifically money,
mhm.
whereas the bag, the Louis Vuitton bag, is also about abundance, but it's about a representation of abundance. It's about showing the world how abundant you are.
Not just holding the
Right. So if we
abundance
remember, it's
privately in
not
the
the
wallet.
wallet and the bag in real life where it's like, well, the bag is worth more than the wallet. Like that's waking life thoughts. So we have to go to the symbol.
Mhm.
A wallet is a symbol. Both are symbols of abundance. Only one is the immediate personal sense of this is how much abundance I think I have.
Got it.
Then the decision to buy a purse is like, look how abundant my life is. I celebrate my abundant life by allowing something enjoyable to come into my life that's a reflection of it.
Mhm.
The purse, then, the bag, is actually, I think, a cleaner symbol. Cleaner meaning the relationship between a person, their sense of abundance, and this object that represents, I have enough abundance to enjoy this, sort of has a flow to it. But an idea of the wallet
Mhm.
is my money and is also, think about it. If you pick up a wallet, it's going to have a finite amount of money in it. Like if I got my wallet right now, which is in
Right.
another room, there'd be X number of dollars. So the wallet becomes a symbol of perceiving abundance as simply, do I have the amount of money I wish I had?
Ah.
So I think that in both dreams, the craving for the wallet and the only feeling terrible about the wallet is a reflection of I see abundance more specifically as something finite, a kind of money consciousness. And if I lose it, if it's taken away from me, then abundance stops. I can't buy anything. Now,
Mm.
if we add to this idea of breaking down this dream, when we have a waking life story that says this woman, through her partnership, has come into a great deal of more money at some point in her history. And one of the interesting things about money as
Mhm.
consciousness is that people who get sudden expansions of money abundance don't often keep it. This is what happens to lottery winners.
Right. Or, famous musicians, basketball players who you find out, oh, they're just
That's
like
right.
me, monetary
Because if the
wise.
consciousness that starts off is one of somewhat lack orientation, and you give that person $1 million, there isn't the consciousness to keep it. There might be the consciousness to spend it,
Ah.
but the consciousness isn't there to receive and own that much prosperity. I think this dream, or any dreams that have been like it, is actually helping Helene own her own experience of expanded abundance by taking her into places where her psyche is showing her the distinction between living in the flow of abundant, I have an abundant life. That is represented by the Louis Vuitton bag. I can afford a beautiful bag. But being horrified at the wallet
Mhm.
missing is to say that the thing she fears is that there won't be money when she wants it.
Hmm. I'm curious about this taxi driver changing
Well, listen,
appearances.
I'm curious about the taxi driver dream too, in this way. Like the first dream to me introduces me to the idea. Like it's very clear in the first dream that there's just this two things
Right.
that that I'm distinguishing as abundant flow and money as abundance. And then the second dream gives us deeper distinctions. First of all, if the dream takes back in Istanbul, which is where she lived 10 years before coming to the US, then the second dream is describing something about her consciousness of abundance from way before in her life.
And she mentioned she had financially tough times over the years. So I'm assuming over the years might include the past.
I think let's just go with that,
Istanbul.
right? That's a good assumption to make. We might be wrong. She can email us if we are.
Yeah, please let us know.
So there's something important about this figure in the dream. Now, remember, it's her dream, which means the taxi driver is an aspect of her consciousness. If you think about what a car is your ability to move through life, your ability to make choices that impact your social experience, your cultural experience, your movement out and about in the world. So a taxi isn't your car. It's something you sort of temporarily visit to get you someplace. So it's a consideration of what do I need to learn here about how I choose to get around in the world. In fact, I could even go so far as to say taxis are a symbol of somewhat abundant living because not everybody can afford to take a taxi when in a big city.
That is true.
So this driver in the dream is part of Pauline's consciousness, like a character aspect of a part of her that used to drive her in an abundant consciousness in one way that changes to a different way, right? We're breaking the time considerations here. The Middle Eastern guy isn't from 20 years ago and the redhead is from today, but it's interesting that the dream takes place in a location that says we know we're in Pauline's past consideration. And this driver is the one who, in her psyche, occasionally takes her abundance and drives forward with it. Like, I got to take this and I will steward your abundance forward. But the dream reflects the fear that what if I lose my money? What if this abundance goes away? This money that has now come into their life, there's a part of Pauline that is worried that it will be taken away. And this dream is showing, I think, some evolution of trying to come into a more graceful relationship with her own perspectives of what money and prosperity look like. If you add up 100 euros and $200, we get the numerology of 3.
Strong number.
Strong number. It's the number of primal divine creativity. Father, mother, child. Person, the concept of abundance, money. So that's the triangle here. I have a body, and therefore I can do things. I dwell with the principle of abundant flow. And then the transcendent third that's created is all of the ways that abundance can show up. So the 10 euros and $200, I think, reflects that if we consider this dream as a kind of divine intervention moment, what happens next? One is we got to choke the old taxi driver. That means we have to change our language about loss or lack or flow that diminishes. What do we say sometimes when we have less money? We'll say, oh my God, I'm going broke, or oh, I don't have enough, you know? Those ideas count. They inform how we relate to our money and our abundance. And so choking the taxi driver, that's a throat chakra thing that's saying, I don't like the way you're speaking about money and abundance. And he changes. He's different now. Now he's this red-headed man. Now, I would need Pauline here to investigate what her personal associations, why the old version is a Middle Eastern man and the new version is a red-headed man. I will just say this. It reflects an evolution. I think it reflects a higher level simply because of dream consciousness, that we're always looking at where growth is happening. So if the old version of the taxi driver goes away and there's a new version, I'm going to trust that the new version, the red-headed man, is a more evolved expression of Pauline's abundant consciousness. And so something has in fact happened as reflected by this dream, that there's a shift going on for Pauline about how she relates to abundance and flow. And then she leaves us with the best piece of all, which is the association that Louis Vuitton, L and V, ultimately help spell love. And when we see our abundance as a function of all the love we can generate in our life and not just about money, then we move out of toxic prosperity and into understanding true abundance.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.